Every parting in life doesn't always arrive with tears. Sometimes it comes in silence. And in the final years of a person's life, there are signs that are ever so small, ever so quiet, yet carry a meaning so profound it chokes the heart. One of those signs is unexplained weight loss. When your elderly loved one starts wearing old clothes they once said were too tight, don't be too quick to celebrate, thinking they've become healthier or slimmer. When the belt needs to be tightened another notch, when the dress that used to fit snugly now hangs loosely, take a moment to pause and look more closely. It could be their body trying to tell you something, a whisper of a biological transition unfolding in silence, a slow farewell to life as they've known it. At an old age, a bit of weight loss can be normal. But when that weight loss continues steadily, consistently, and without a clear cause, no dieting, no increase in physical activity, no change in portions, then it is no longer about body shape. It is about a decline in metabolic function, a loss of nutrient absorption, a reduction in muscle mass, which is the core of mobility, immunity, and the will to survive. What's frightening is that this kind of weight loss doesn't come with cries of pain, it's quiet. It starts with the feeling of being full too soon before finishing even half the meal. With the words, "I'll just eat this much, I'm not very hungry." With them leaving most of the food untouched or only picking at a few soft pieces before setting down their chopsticks. And we, their children and grandchildren, sometimes assume it's just old people being picky, always complaining, or eating less because of age. But few people realize that this is the first sign of the body disconnecting from life. When someone no longer finds food appetizing, no longer feels hunger, or even loses the ability to taste, that's when the brain and digestive system have begun to slow down. They're no longer sending hunger signals, no longer requesting energy, because in a very profound way, they're preparing not to need energy anymore. And what's even more heartbreaking is this: no matter how much you coax them, how many favorite dishes you make, how many expensive supplements or nutritional drinks you offer, if this process has begun, you'll still see them continue to lose weight, eating less, feeling weak, even with attentive care. Because this is no longer about food intake. This is about diminished absorption. The liver, kidneys, intestines, and musculoskeletal system no longer function as they used to. The biological flow is slowing down, like a river at its end, ready to merge with the vast ocean. You'll see them grow weaker, move more slowly, hands and feet tremble more. They may feel dizzy when standing. They may need to steady themselves on the wall after a few steps. You'll notice them breathing more lightly, not because they're tired, but because their respiratory muscles are no longer strong. You'll hear them speak less, more softly, not because they're in, but because the body no longer has the strength to produce a powerful voice. Many will try to respond with action. They buy more supplements, insist on drinking nutritional milk, prepare more elaborate meals, and that coming from genuine love is deeply admirable. But sometimes the important thing is not to try to stop this process. It's to recognize it, walk alongside it, and help our loved ones live as comfortably as possible in their remaining days. Let meals be a place of connection again, not a battlefield of persuasion. Choose foods that are easy to chew, easy to swallow, warm, mildly scented, and neatly presented. Don't stress over finishing the plate. Instead, smile when they eat just a few spoonfuls. Sit with them, eat with them, so they feel that eating isn't a duty, but a moment of being with family. And remember, don't measure the effectiveness of elderly care by the number of pounds gained, because at certain stages, that's out of our control. The goal is no longer to prolong life, but to help them live lightly, without worry, without pain, without pressure, until the moment truly comes to say goodbye. If you're witnessing a loved one losing weight despite not dieting, not overexerting themselves, and without any acute illness or cause, look more closely. And most importantly, stay by their side, so that each meal is no longer a battle but a comfort, so that each meal is not just about providing energy, but becomes the final thread of connection between the one who's leaving and those who remain. If you see these things happening to someone you love, leave a 1, so I know you're walking this path too, and so that others silently worry just like you will know they are not alone. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot heal, a deep depletion that seeps into every cell, making no sound, voicing no complaint, yet silently wears down a person's will to serve. In the final years of life, the elderly body no longer functions as it used to. They may go to bed earlier, wake up later, nap more frequently during the day, and then one day you suddenly notice they hardly do anything at all, yet always seem tired, breathless, drained. Just getting out of bed takes time to regain balance. Just walking from the sofa to the window becomes an overwhelming journey. This is not laziness. This is not simply age making them slow down. This is the body entering a new stage where every bit of energy is redirected, preserved only for the most vital functions. Activities that once felt routine, walking, changing clothes, washing their face, making a cup of tea, are now too demanding. Not because they don't want to do them, but because their body no longer has the strength. The heart begins to reduce its pumping capacity. The lungs no longer expand fully to draw in oxygen. Muscle tissues are no longer adequately oxygenated. The body instinctively prioritizes energy for only the most essential survival functions, maintaining heartbeat, breathing, and regulating temperature. Everything else is deemed non-essential. This leads to an outcome that many families find difficult to accept. They no longer want to get out of bed, no longer want to go for walks, no longer care about routines that once brought them joy. And then from the body, this exhaustion spills into the spirit. They speak less, withdraw from conversations, shy away from visitors, avoid contact. Not out of sadness or anger, but simply because they don't have the strength. You may see them doze off during meals, drift into sleep while watching television, sit motionless in a chair all afternoon without doing anything. You worry, perhaps wondering if they're depressed, but sometimes this is the natural physiological state of a body nearing its limit. This prolonged fatigue is a clear sign that the body no longer recovers through rest. Each sleep becomes merely a brief pause, no longer enough to rejuvenate as before. Many call it being tired to the bone. But for the elderly, it is exhaustion from deep within where life is growing faint. What's heartbreaking is that while our loved ones experience this state, many families unintentionally pressure them. You have to move around to stay healthy. You're sleeping too much. Get up and stretch your legs. These words of encouragement, though filled with love, can become burdens. Because those nearing life's end, they don't need physical training. They need rest. They need their body's limits to be honored. And above all, they need the presence of loved ones, not to do anything, just to sit beside them, to breathe together, to listen in silence. When they no longer have the strength to converse, hold their hand. When they fall asleep mid-sentence, don't wake them. When they can no longer make it to the balcony, bring the sunlight into their room. Sometimes love is not in helping them get better, but in helping them feel at peace in the present moment. If you see your loved one becoming exhausted despite doing nothing, please don't force them to be active. Don't measure their health by step counts. Shift the way you ask. From how many laps did you walk today? To do you feel a bit lighter today? And sometimes the answer will be a gentle nod, no words needed. Understand this, that fatigue is not a full stop. It is a message that it's time to slow down, to rest, and to gently prepare for another phase. No one can predict how long this journey will last, but if you recognize it, you can walk alongside them with awareness, unconditional love, and with deep respect for the new rhythm of their life. If you're witnessing your loved one fading, no longer full of energy, no longer eager to go outside, no longer wanting to speak, leave a 2, so I know you are watching, listening, and empathizing. And so that others walking the same quiet path will know they are not alone. There is a strange kind of sorrow that those who stay behind often must face the pain of watching a loved one slowly drift away. Not by body, but by mind. They are still there, sitting in their familiar chair, still sharing meals, still sleeping in the same old room. But at some point you realize their gaze no longer meets yours. Their answers become hesitant. They start asking about things you just told them moments ago. These are no longer the charming little forgetful moments. This is a slow retreat, quiet, unannounced of the mind from the present world, as if their soul is taking its first steps away from this home toward a place deeper, farther. This change often begins with very small signs. They forget the name of a grandchild they once held in their arms. They repeat the same story, each time with different details. They stare out the window for long periods, and when you ask what they're thinking, they fall silent. Sometimes they ask, "What time is it?" even with a clock right in front of them. At times, they call you by the name of someone long gone. Many loved ones at first think they're just tired, or it's normal for old people to be forgetful. But some instances of forgetfulness are just aging, and some are gentle farewells from a mind slowly withdrawing from the present. In the final stages of life, the brain, like all other organs, begins to slow down. Blood flow to the brain decreases, oxygen supply is insufficient, neural connections weaken. But beyond biology, there is another factor: the psyche. When a person senses that life is closing, they often retreat inward. Not out of sadness, not because they've lost their mind, but because they are seeking peace within themselves. They begin to speak less and listen more. They lose interest in noisy conversations, in current events, in daily life stories. Instead, they return to old memories. They speak more about childhood, about the past, about those who've passed. Because to them, the present no longer feels like a safe place. The past, where they were strong, where loved ones still lived, has become a haven. The heartbreaking part is, when loved ones witness this change, they often react with frustration or anxiety. They scold when the elder asks the same question again. They get irritated when corrected on a detail. They try to pull them back to reality with reminders, logic, reasoning. But all that only adds fear to someone who's already disoriented. They don't need your reasoning. They need your gentleness. Understand this: when someone starts to forget, it's not that they don't want to understand, it's that they no longer have the mental energy to grasp it all. When they ask the same question again, it's because they need reassurance. When they don't respond, it's because they're in another place, perhaps a memory from a summer afternoon in 1963, perhaps in the eyes of someone long gone. You cannot pull them back into reality, but you can step into their space with empathy. Instead of correcting, listen. Instead of reacting, hold their hand. Let conversations be less about accuracy and more about sincerity. Sit beside them when they fall silent. Place your hand on their shoulder when they're confused. And if one day they call you by a strange name, don't correct them. Respond with a loving look, because what they remember might be something that once brought them great joy. You may not be able to stop the withdrawal, but you can make it a journey filled with love. Within the gaps of memory, warmth can still be found. Amidst scattered conversations, laughter and connection can still bloom. If you're seeing your loved one begin to speak less, forget more, or quietly pull away from the activities they once loved, don't panic. It may not be an illness. It may be the first step to a goodbye. A goodbye not with tears, but with a distant gaze and a profound silence. And if you've ever sat beside a beloved elder, heard them call the name of someone who's passed, watched them smile at a memory you don't understand, then you've witnessed a sacred moment. That's not loss. That is transition. Leave a 3 if you've ever witnessed that moment, so I know you're still listening, still connecting, and so others also confused by the changes in their loved ones will know they are not alone. There are small scratches that seem harmless, yet may become the final wound. There are mild fevers that appear to require just a night's rest but stretch into days from which one never wakes. When the body enters its final stage, the immune system, once the most loyal shield, begins to falter. And when that protective barrier breaks down, even the most ordinary things can become deadly threats. You may notice your loved one struggling with lingering colds, a mild cough that doesn't go away for weeks, a light fever with no clear cause, a minor bump against the table that becomes red, inflamed, and doesn't heal even after half a month. Urination becomes uncomfortable burning sensations, incomplete voiding, or a strange odor. Sometimes even a mosquito bite swells and bruises abnormally. But all these signs, if you are sensitive enough, are silent warnings. The body is losing its ability to heal itself. In the young, wounds can heal in just a few days. The immune system acts like an elite army, detecting, fighting, and repairing intrusions. But in the elderly nearing the end of life, that army has grown weary. White blood cells diminish in number. Inflammatory responses become ineffective. Blood circulation slows, and nutrients no longer reach the areas that need repair. And so, things that once seemed simple become serious threats. You might hear doctors repeatedly mention recurrent urinary infections, pressure ulcers, pneumonia from immobility. These clinical phrases may sound cold and technical, but behind them lie warnings that should not be ignored. With each infection, the body loses a bit more strength. Each unhealed wound brings the quiet risk of sepsis closer. Many families, out of love, respond by taking the elderly to the hospital, running tests, administering strong antibiotics. And sometimes that is necessary, but at certain points, when the body has entered a state of true frailty, such intense interventions may only add exhaustion, panic, and pain. Because by then, the goal is no longer complete recovery, but easing the burden. Care at this stage doesn't lie in prescriptions, but in the smallest acts. Gently cleaning and changing dressings each day, keeping the skin dry and fresh, lightly massaging the legs to aid circulation, maintaining cleanliness to avoid moisture, propping them with an extra pillow so they're not stuck in one position, ensuring they drink enough water and eat light, easy-to-digest meals instead of force-feeding rich supplements their body can no longer absorb, keeping the room airy, the light soft, and the noise gentle. And above all, patience, not complaining when you must clean up every day, not growing weary when the sore still hasn't healed, not scolding when they can no longer control their bodily functions. Because by that point, they've already lost the ability to defend their own body. And if their loved ones scold or get angry, they may also lose their belief in being cared for with love. Remember, at this age, the body is no longer a warrior. It is an old house, slowly sinking into the earth. We cannot rebuild it as it once was, but we can clean every corner, light every window, and keep it neat and fragrant until the moment of true departure arrives. If you see your loved ones suffering from frequent infections, lingering coughs, low-grade fevers, or minor wounds that don't heal, pay attention. Don't wait for complications to call it dangerous. Recognize early and care early, not to extend time, but to cherish every remaining moment of life. Leave a 4 if you've seen these signs in those around you, not to prove anything, but to share so that those quietly walking through this stage won't feel like they're fighting alone. There are moments when you sit beside a loved one and suddenly realize their breathing has changed. Breaths that are uneven, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, sometimes paused as if they're hesitating between staying or leaving. At times, the room feels so still, you find yourself leaning in just to make sure they're still breathing. This isn't your imagination. It's not just a reaction to anxiety. It's a sign, subtle yet clear, that the body is gently closing down its final functions. Breathing from the moment we are born is the very first rhythm of life. And as life prepares to end, breath begins to change like the final notes of a song before it fades away. You may notice your loved one breathing more shallowly. Gone are the deep, full breaths replaced by short, interrupted gasps, sometimes with a raspy sound, as if they're trying to hold on to every last bit of precious oxygen. Sometimes they must sit up to breathe, no longer able to lie down, because each time they do, it feels like a heavy stone pressing on their chest. There are moments you think they're asleep, only to be startled by a deep, forceful breath, as if they've just emerged from a silent battle. Along with breath, circulation begins to change. You may notice their hands growing colder than usual, fingertips turning bluish, skin growing pale or mottled in shades of grayish blue. The nose, ears, knees, the furthest points from the heart, begin to lose warmth. Tiny veins become visible beneath the skin, but the pulse feels weak. This is not ordinary chill. This is when the heart, after millions of tireless beats, enters its final rest. Many family members, upon seeing these changes, panic, layering on more blankets, turning on heaters, frantically calling for emergency services. But here is something not everyone knows. This is a natural process, a retreat of life, and it does not always require intervention. Because the goal is no longer to keep them here, but to help them go gently, with peace, surrounded by love. In these final hours, the most important thing is not tracking blood pressure or heart rate. The most important thing is presence. A hand holding theirs, a gentle voice whispering by their ear, the soft strains of music they once loved filling the room, a tender light filtering through the window, the familiar scent of tea or an old bottle of oil they used to keep nearby, the absolute peace they can feel not through the mind, but through the soul. You don't need to do much, just be there. When their breath is labored, don't be afraid. Add a pillow, let them rest slightly tilted to ease the lungs. When their limbs are cold, warm them gently, but don't wrap them too tightly. When their lips are dry, moisten them with a damp cloth. And if they no longer have the strength to speak, lean in and whisper that you're here and that you love them. Because sometimes that one quiet sentence may be the last thing they ever hear in this world. If you see your loved one breathing irregularly, their limbs cold, lips purple, or skin pale, understand that this is not something terrible. It is a journey, a transitional phase. And if passed through with gentleness, with loving eyes, with the warmth of family, it can be a beautiful ending. None of us can choose how we are born, but we can help our loved ones choose how they leave, not alone, not in pain, not afraid. If you are witnessing changes in breath, circulation, or skin tone in someone you love, and you've ever felt lost in the moment, then I hope now you understand this is the body's final whisper. A goodbye, soft and quiet, free from pain or noise. All it asks is that you listen. Leave a 5 if you've lived through such a moment, so I know you are here with this story. And so that others, sitting silently by a bedside, will know they are not alone. Old age is not an ending. It is another journey, quieter, deeper, and if we know how to embrace it, even more beautiful than any stage that came before. Throughout this video, we've walked together through 5 signs, 5 silent messages the body of someone in their final year may be sending out. The unexplained weight loss, not simply from eating less, but because the body no longer absorbs like it used to. The lingering fatigue, not from overwork, but from internal organs operating in a low-power state. The retreat of the mind, not because they no longer care, but because they are seeking a final inner stillness. The small recurring infections, not from poor care, but because the body no longer has the strength to resist. And the changes in breath, skin color, circulation, not an emergency alarm, but the natural sign of an approaching final journey. Recognizing these signs doesn't mean we are surrendering to fate. It means we are waking up. It means we understand that while time may be short, it is still enough to create something profound, enough to prevent regrets, enough to turn each remaining day into a day that truly matters. Remember, you don't have to cure your loved one. You just need to be there, with gentleness, with your gaze, with a hand to hold. With quiet acts like wiping their face, helping them sit up, whispering love into their ear. They may not remember your name, but they will remember the feeling of you being there. They may no longer speak, but they will hear with their soul. And your love, your presence, your tenderness will be the final gift they carry with them. If you are living with an elderly loved one, try one small change this week. Maybe clear out their sleeping space for more fresh air. Maybe to let go of "you have to eat more" and instead to say, "What would you like to eat? I'll make it." Maybe replace a "why are you sleeping so much" with a quiet moment of just sitting beside them, holding their hand in silence. And if this video has touched you in some way, leave a comment below. Who are you walking alongside? What have you realized? Or just a simple message for the one you love. You are not alone. We, those learning how to love our parents the right way in their final days, are walking this same path. A path that is not easy, but also the most beautiful, most meaningful journey any human being can take. Thank you for listening and for staying until the end.